Scattered across the windswept hills and valleys of Sardinia lie immense stone monuments, megalithic towers, tombs, and standing stones that seem far too massive and mysterious to have been left behind by ordinary hands, their silent presence whispering of an ancient truth that mainstream history is reluctant to confront. For centuries, locals have told stories of giant beings who once roamed the island, towering figures of flesh and blood, whose bones were said to be buried beneath the fields and hidden inside the massive stone chambers, leaving behind an enduring mystery that refuses to die. What if the legends are not mere folklore, but fragments of an older, deeper truth that connects directly to the biblical accounts of giants, the Nephilim, and their desperate flight from the lands of Canaan, as Joshua and the Israelites swept through in their conquest of the Promised Land after the Exodus from Egypt? Could it be that Sardinia, isolated in the middle of the Mediterranean, became a final refuge for the last of these beings, who in their exile raised the great stone towers known as Nuraghi, and left behind the monumental tombs that to this day are still called the tombs of the giants? And if so, why do so many whispered stories tell of bones being unearthed, only to be confiscated, suppressed, and hidden away by officials working hand in hand with the Vatican, determined that humanity never learns the truth of its forgotten past? The story begins thousands of years ago, in the lands of the ancient Near East, where the Israelites under Joshua marched into Canaan after their long years of wandering in the desert, carrying with them a divine mandate to reclaim the land promised to them by God. The biblical text itself speaks of formidable foes awaiting them there, tribes of immense stature and terrifying strength, the descendants of the Nephilim, a mysterious race described in Genesis as the offspring of the sons of God, and the daughters of men, beings of enormous size and strange power. These giants, known by names such as the Anakim and the Rephaim, were feared across the region, and when the spies of Israel first scouted the land, they returned with trembling voices declaring that they were as grasshoppers in comparison to the inhabitants who dwelled there. Joshua's conquest, however, was relentless, and the once mighty tribes of giants were hunted down, their strongholds torn apart, and their survivors scattered in desperation across the known world, seeking refuge in remote places where they could rebuild. Some fled north into the distant mountains, others westward into hidden lands, and according to one enduring legend, a remnant of the Nephilim crossed the Mediterranean Sea and found sanctuary on the rocky shores of Sardinia, far removed from the armies of Israel and the eyes of history. Imagine these immense beings stepping ashore on a land rich in stone and wild terrain, their colossal frames casting shadows over the rocky coastline, resolved to build once more the monuments of their ancestors and to preserve their knowledge in towering sanctuaries of stone. Today, Sardinia remains one of the most archaeologically dense regions on Earth, with more than 12,000 known megalithic sites ranging from mysterious stone towers to vast communal tombs, from solitary menhirs standing tall in the fields to dolmens carved with skill that defies explanation. The most iconic of these structures are the Nuraghi, immense circular towers built from blocks of stone sometimes weighing many tons, rising in some cases several stories high. Their interiors containing spiral staircases, vaulted chambers, and defensive walls that still stand after more than 3,000 years. Mainstream archaeology insists that these were the works of a Bronze Age culture known as the Nuraghic people. Yet the sheer scale, precision, and sheer number of these towers, more than 7,000 across the island, raise questions about whether such an undertaking was truly possible for tribal communities with primitive tools. Then there are the tombs of the giants, long and imposing stone chambers with curved facades and central passages stretching outward, their shape resembling the body of a colossal figure when seen from above, a feature that inspired the legend that they were once the resting places of giants. Legends speak of bones uncovered within these tombs that were not the size of ordinary men, but of beings towering well over twice the height of the average human, skeletal remains that stirred awe and fear among farmers and shepherds who stumbled upon them. Could it be that the structures themselves are not merely monuments of ritual or defense, but lasting testaments to the Nephilim who fled here, beings whose strength could indeed have raised stones that still baffle engineers and architects today? Throughout the past 2 centuries, scattered reports have emerged from Sardinian villages of farmers plowing their fields only to uncover bones so large they seem to belong to another species entirely. Skulls massive enough to fill a man's arms and femurs far longer than a human leg. In some accounts, workers restoring ancient Nuraghi claim to have seen vast skeletal remains before authorities quickly intervened, sealing off the site and removing every trace of what had been found, leaving only rumors behind. Old men in mountain villages told their grandchildren of the days when bones were unearthed near the giants' tombs, only for strangers in official cars to arrive soon afterward, carrying away the remains and warning locals to speak no further of what they had seen. In whispered tones, Sardinians have passed down the story that their ancestors did not invent the idea of giants, but remembered them, not as myth, but as flesh and blood beings whose graves and bones lay hidden beneath their very soil. The pattern is eerily familiar: giant bones seen, briefly touched, described in awe, then suddenly disappearing from public record, as though an invisible hand had decided such evidence must never reach the wider world. What explains this strange cycle, and why would every trace of these discoveries be taken away so swiftly, unless the truth of the giants was deemed too dangerous for history to acknowledge? According to persistent accounts, whenever giant bones have been unearthed in Sardinia, it is not long before officials arrive, sometimes accompanied by individuals said to be working under the authority of the Vatican. Their mission simple: confiscate the evidence and silence the witnesses. In one recurring story, locals describe trucks pulling up to ancient sites, loading crates filled with bones or artifacts, and driving them away under armed escort, leaving only barren soil where once lay the fragments of a lost race. The Vatican has long maintained one of the world's most secretive archives, containing countless documents and relics never shown to the public, and for those who believe in the Sardinian giant legends, it is here that the confiscated remains of the Nephilim now lie, hidden from the eyes of mankind. Government agencies, too, wary of disturbing the carefully curated narrative of human history, have allegedly played their part, closing excavations, denying permits, and ensuring that no archaeologist who values his career dares speak openly of giants in Sardinia. Could it be that the Church fears the theological implications of proving the existence of the Nephilim, beings born of a union between heavenly and earthly beings, which would challenge centuries of doctrine and raise questions too dangerous to answer? Or perhaps the suppression is part of a broader global effort to erase every trace of a forgotten chapter of history, one in which humans were not alone on Earth, but shared it with colossal beings whose existence would rewrite everything we think we know about our past. If the stories are true, then Sardinia is not merely an island of scenic beauty and ancient ruins, but the last refuge of a race nearly erased from history, a land where giants once walked and left behind the megalithic skeleton of their forgotten civilization. The Nuraghi, the giants' tombs, the dolmens, and menhirs may not be the work of ordinary Bronze Age tribes, but the enduring architecture of the Nephilim, survivors of a biblical purge who fled across the sea to preserve themselves and their legacy. These legends echo those told in other corners of the world, where massive stones and forgotten cities are attributed to giants, from the Cyclopean walls of Peru to the colossal platforms of Baalbek, from the Moai of Easter Island to the stone circles of Britain, suggesting a global memory of beings who stood apart from men. Perhaps the suppression of Sardinia's giants is not simply about bones or artifacts, but about control, for if humanity were to realize that its history is entangled with beings of enormous size and power, then every assumption about our origins, our destiny, and our place in the cosmos would be shaken. And yet, despite the silence of institutions, the ruins remain, vast stones unmoved by time, mute witnesses to a story that refuses to vanish, their very presence daring us to ask who placed them there, and whether the truth of Sardinia's giants can ever truly be buried. The legend whispers that after the Exodus, the Nephilim who survived the wrath of Joshua sought refuge in Sardinia, and there they built towers and tombs of stone, leaving their bones as silent testimony, only for those bones to be hidden away by powers who fear what they reveal. Perhaps one day the vaults will open, and the truth of the giants will finally come to light, But until then, the Nuraghi and the giants' tombs will continue to stand as monuments to a past we are told never existed. So what do you believe? Were the giants real, and did they build the megalithic structures of Sardinia? Or are the legends nothing more than myths, shaped by fear and wonder, passed down through generations who gazed upon stones too massive for ordinary men to have placed? The ruins remain, the stories endure, and the mystery deepens with every passing year, reminding us that history is not always what we are told, and that sometimes the greatest truths are those that remain forbidden.